welcome to another episode of Mike and Dave's Hi-Fi Riff. I'm Mike Evans.
And I'm David Price.
David, today what are we going to be doing on Mike and Dave's Hi-Fi Riff?
It's the NAD 3020.
And this is a piece of absolute, unequivocal, hi-fi classic glory, isn't it? It's a beautiful, I've got one here, it's a beautiful, beautiful amplifier.
A legendary product.
It really is a legendary product, look at that. And this one's in super condition. It's like it's just come out of the showroom.
Yeah.
Really nice. Really fond of these, and I know you are particularly because you owned the 3120, I think, didn't you?
Yes, that's right. I had the 3120, which, as the Hi-Fi Riff train spotters will know, is the 3020 without the tone controls.
Yes.
So
yes.
yeah, it was naturally for me, Mike, it was the audiophile version, you know.
No, quite. And I think it was quite an interesting upgrade as well, wasn't it, to ditch the tone controls. And that set a trend then for an awful lot of other amplifiers to follow. Because it sort of started out with like people like Arkham and Creek and so on who had tone controls, and then gradually they ditched them and became sort of straight through.
Yep.
The thought process being, the cleaner the signal path, the better it would sound, and NAD did the same.
Yep.
But with this glorious 3020, this original 3020, it retained the tone controls, but I would probably be as bold to say that actually they don't do a huge amount.
No.
It's not a night and day difference when you tweak the treble or the bass.
I think that's true.
It's just a sort of gentle adjustment, isn't it?
It does have, however, it does have a loudness button.
Yes.
Which is a throwback to
look at that.
The days of the mid-late 70s when loudness buttons were all the rage, weren't they?
They really were.
The fact that this is, I think it's a 1983 model, the 3020B, still has a loudness button, shows you this sort of lineage that goes back to when the original 3020 was introduced, which I think was October 1978.
I'm sure you're right.
Yeah,
I'm sure you're right.
So,
and the loudness button, it was sort of, you were supposed to sort of boost the bass and boost the treble, wasn't it?
Yes.
All in one go. It was like a sort of super tone control.
Yes.
But the idea was, forgive me if I'm incorrect here, but I think the idea was you're only supposed to use it at reasonably low volumes, because it was, at low volumes, obviously, they felt you needed a bit more oomph.
Yeah.
But nobody ever did that. They just put the loudness button on and turn it up to 10.
Exactly.
And get that extra oomph anyway, all the way through the rev range.
It was compulsory at student parties, wasn't it?
It was,
so
yes.
So many students of our age had one of these, and you'd go to a student party, and the loudness button will be on, the volume control will be on maximum, and the 5 little LEDs on the power meter would be glowing away.
Absolutely. And you know what? They kept on going, didn't they? They were so reliable, these amplifiers. I think partly because they were so beautifully put together and built. Yeah. It's a classic signal path. It's a classic bit of circuitry, really decent components. Yeah. And this one's still going strong today without any problem at all.
Yeah, it's ironic that about the only thing that's plastic on this amplifier is the fascia.
Yes.
So the bit that you can see looks cheap.
Yes.
And the rest of it is
really solid.
Really solid.
It is. Yeah. It's a good heavyweight amplifier actually. Yeah. And there's a few things which were also quite futuristic, like the ability to bypass the power amp. Yep. So you could just have this as a preamp.
Yep. Perhaps you might like to show the viewers the link there.
The technology came with a link which goes behind it,
just here,
and it's literally that.
So,
isn't it?
And you could the trend was you could pull those links out and get little bits of solid core hi-fi interconnect wire.
That's right. Yeah.
And with little phono plugs on, and you could upgrade your sound.
Yeah. The cheapest upgrade you could ever make.
Was.
And so this with. Kind of systems we're talking about, this with, maybe something like a dual CS505 turntable, an Audiophile cartridge, moving magnet cartridge, And then I don't know, it's a whole range of speakers from the Wharfdale Diamonds, which we've talked about before.
And Kef Coders, the early Kef Coders, Celestion Dittons, early Tannoy Mercuries, those kind of things.
Yes, yeah.
That's what you'd see these with.
I had a pair of Tannoy Mercuries, and I thought they were terrific speakers. We should see if we could get some of those for a future Hi-Fi Riff, maybe.
Yeah.
But you'd have your QED 79 strand cable.
Yep.
Which was mandatory, which I think was 79p a meter. Coincidentally at the time,
exactly,
and that was your system. And then, if you were lucky, you'd have a turntable table and a decent pair of speaker stands.
Yeah,
and you were away. But what I liked about these amps was there was no shortage of inputs.
Yeah.
Now I've got, you know where I'm going with this.
I do. Yeah.
I've got a Name Nate which definitely has a shortage of inputs, and totally opposite to here, but this has got a tape monitor, and you've got your aux, way pre CD, obviously.
That's right.
Tuner, phono, etc. So future-proofed with the aux input, if you like.
Yeah.
And obviously the ability to have a tape loop as well. So really, really cracking bit of kit.
Yeah, it had everything you really needed, I think.
It did. Yeah.
But the nice thing for me is that it comes from. It almost accidentally makes itself better, because the one that came before it was the 3030, which was a bigger silver-fronted, silver fascia design, which is almost twice as high.
Yes. Had
power meters and stuff.
Yes.
And when this came out, it was like a kind of minimalism compared to the 3030.
It was, yes.
So it's almost like the first 3020s were a sort of stripped down, minimalist thing, and that tells you a lot about 1970s hi-fi, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
If this is minimalist,
it really does.
Yeah. So
and in fact, the other thing which this had, which was slightly not minimalist, was it had an MC and an MM board. So it was sort of quite cartridge agnostic.
Yeah, I think that came with the 3020A.
Right. Okay.
In 1981, they did the A version.
Yes.
And they changed the fascia slightly. The very first one says Series 20 on the fascia, and they have MM moving magnet only. And this generation have a slightly, I think I might be wrong, but a slightly darker grey, and the A had a moving coil phono stage, which was a very good one, I hasten to add. Amazingly good for the price. And they finally did the 3020B, which this one is, which had a speaker impedance selector, so you could sort of set it to whether you were driving 4 ohm nominal impedance loads or 8 ohm. And also it had speaker binding posts, better binding posts than the early ones. So so a little, nice little additions that made it even better for the money, I think.
And I think you were saying to me that this sold over 1 million units, the series. That's phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine that? I mean, that shows you how great this amp is.
Yeah.
And I think there's a clear winner reason why. It sounds great. I mean, it just sounds great.
It does, yeah.
I don't know how old you were when you had yours, but I remember coming to your house and just being blown away by it. It was just fantastic.
Yeah.
I'd never had anything as good.
Yeah.
At the time, it was just absolutely brilliant.
It's. I think it's got quite a valve-like sound, hasn't it?
Yes. I guess it has.
It's
it's very smooth.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's very smooth. It's very sweet. The early ones, especially the 3020, the pre-A and the pre-B, were even warmer, I think, than the later ones.
Right.
But the later ones are still way warmer than most amplifiers, I think, then or now.
Sure.
So it had a lovely kind of sweet and rich tonality. You didn't need to press the loudness control because it was already warm enough.
And bags of power.
Yeah, I mean this was the thing. Rather like the Nate that you mentioned earlier. It's not particularly powerful, but it's got great current driving ability.
Yes, sure.
So the NAD is rated at 20 watts RMS per channel, but they reckon that's into 8 ohms. But they reckon that into 4 it's about 40, and in 2 it's about 72.
Wow.
Which is incredible.
Yes.
Because to have an almost, double and then double power output as the load impedance halves, that's quite amazing. That says a lot about the power supply.
It really does, doesn't it? And I can feel it's a heavy old power supply in there as well. And it also comes with possibly one of the best and maybe not the most well-known stories in hi-fi history, which is it was in Hi-Fi Review.
Yep.
And it was, I think, Chris Franklin who wrote the article.
Yep.
And he wasn't doing a review of the NAD. He was doing a review of the Audio Research SP9 preamp.
Yeah.
Which I think was, thousands of pounds. Thousands. And this was, how much was this? This was...
Well, this would have... The first one started at $59.95, right? So that was in late 78. As soon as NAD got their first good review, it went up to $79.95.
Big percentage increase there.
Yeah. But I think by the time Chris Franklin did that review that you're talking about, which was in probably 84, 85, something like that. No, 83, 82, but around that, so 83-ish.
Okay.
So we'd be talking roughly 120 quid for...
Yes, and so the story was that Chris Franklin was less than enamoured with the esoteric piece of audio research preamp for thousands and thousands of pounds, and used the NAD Phono stage instead by taking out the links at the back, the jumpers at the back, and plugging it into his power amplifier. And I think he said something along the lines of, a whole veil was lifted away from the sound when we switched to the NAD. It was clearly a far more superior preamplifier stage.
So I don't think they got Audio Research Advertising
no.
Hi-Fi Review
no.
Following that, if they ever did.
Who would have been their importer at the time?
Probably would have been Absolute Sound, the same then as now. But yes, I think it's fair to say that there was quite a frosty relationship. But Chris Franklin had his favourites, didn't he? And Hi-Fi Review had its favourites. And we used to, I don't think we always believed them completely, but we certainly enjoyed the sheer theatre of...
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't from Salisbury or Glasgow, then forget it. Really.
Yeah.
So.
Although this was actually one of the few things that he grudgingly did like that wasn't from Salisbury or Glasgow.
Yeah. Well, it sort of proves it must have been really good.
Yeah.
So in a kind of perverse way.
That's right.
So
that and Creek and the Creek Audio CAS 4040.
Yes.
Became its biggest rival.
Yes.
And I think you and I are going to do a riff on that at some point fairly soon. But
we will.
That was a very interesting kind of rivalry because there were two quite different amplifiers with different heritages, but had strangely quite a similar sound, I thought. Warm and musical.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny you should mention the Creek because a pal of mine has just bought one from eBay for £70.
Okay.
And he had a housewarming party last night, which I went to,
Yeah.
and they had the Creek on 10 for the whole of the night, and it had no issues and no problems whatsoever, exactly as we were just talking about with this.
Fantastic.
So how cool is that? But no, we loved this. This was a great hi-fi product. This was our gateway into hi-fi.
That's a great way of putting it. It's a gateway drug, wasn't it?
It was.
And it got so many people into proper grown-up hi-fi.
Yes.
And thinking about the price, and we were talking about this earlier, when this came out, it would have sold for the equivalent now of £275, which is amazing.
Yes, absolutely.
So there is nothing on sale now.
No.
At that price or anywhere near it that is as well built or that sounds anywhere near as good.
No, absolutely.
And they did put the price up a bit, but still, I think you're looking at 700, 800, 900 quid at least to get anything now that comes close.
Yes. And we were firmly hooked.
Yeah.
From there on in, we were addicts from there on, and still are, and it's cost us a lot more money than that in the long run, hasn't it?
So it was a false economy, Mike.
It was. We
should have stuck to the music centre.
Absolutely, and I love the fact that NAD is new acoustic dimension as well. It's just a really space age term, isn't it? It's just a great name for a company.
Well, it's funny you mention that because the company came out, I think, originally in 1972, And it does sound very 1972, doesn't it? You know, kind of
absolutely,
almost kind of pre Dark Side of the Moon, but we're kind of in this sort of hippie era.
Sure.
And it's funny that it took the company such a long time, basically 5 years plus, to really get any traction in the UK. Or anywhere else for that matter. But when they did, when they hit this, they absolutely hit gold dust.
They really did.
Yeah.
They put them firmly on the map, didn't it? 1.1 million units sold.
Yeah, amazing.
It really is. It really is.
But not surprising when you hear it.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. And you know, you, as you say, if you want to buy something as good as this these days, you've got to spend a lot more than 250 quid.
Yeah.
So brilliant. So look, let's do a hi-fi kind of retro riffometer.
Yeah.
Out of 10.
It's got to be 10, hasn't it?
Got to be 10. Simple as that, isn't it? Simple as that. Gateway drug.
Yeah.
The gateway hi-fi drug. I love it. Excellent. The NAD 3020B. Thanks very much indeed for watching this episode of, kind of classic episode of Mike and Dave's Hi-Fi Riff. And we'll look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks very much indeed.
Bye.
Bye-bye.